Hey, hi. Do you know that in the night of Donald Trump's inauguration, there was a really big party, really big, big. A lot of important people there, really prestigious, really important people, big people. Do you know who was there? The guy who created the Gateway Pundit. You know what his name is? Jim Hoft. He created the Gateway Pundit. Real big right wing publication. Real big, big stuff, guys. Must have really enraged the left to find out that a bunch of right wing geniuses were having a lot of fun, having a good time and celebrating, Donald Trump's victory while these SJW snowflakes were drowning in their tears. And do you know what else? Do you know who else was there? It was Lucian Wintrinch was there. Yeah, Lucian Wintrinch. His real name is Lucian Einhorn. And do you know what all these guys have in common? They're homosexual and proud Zionist. Real pro-Israel guys. They support the state of Israel. Isn't that great? Amazing, amazing. And the left sides with Muslims who kill gays. Yeah, and these guys are against the Muslims. So the left actually hates gay people. Yeah, yeah. They actually support gays being thrown off roofs because they support Muslims. And do you know there's a lot of great right wing thinkers out there, and we saw a lot of them in this party. And do you know who else was there? You know who else was there? Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel was there, and he's not Jewish, but he's a German guy, but he's also gay, but big brain in the right wing world. Really important guy, really important, very intelligent, very intelligent. He was also there, and do you know who he backed? He was backing a guy named Mencius Moldbug. That's right, Mencius Moldbug. You know what his real name was? His real name was Curtis Yarvin. That was his real name, and he's also a proud Jew, very intelligent guy, and he also supports biological realities. Like white people are smarter than blacks. Yeah, the left doesn't want to admit that. They're too scared of the Muslims. They're too scared because of political correctness. But we all know that science supports racism because racism is intelligent. So that is my impersonation of the typical right-wing fanatic, and they are legion. There are so many of them. My goodness, so many of them. I'm currently reading this book, almost done with it. It's called Antisocial. It's written by a New Yorker journalist, and by New Yorker I don't mean that he's from New York. I mean he writes for a magazine called The New Yorker. His name is Andrew Marantz. Also, he's a Jewish guy, but he exposes a lot of the evil of the right wing, and this book, I must say, is very entertaining. I don't agree with everything in the book, of course, because the book is written by a liberal, so he says things that I disagree with. But the times that he says things that I disagree with are very small. Like, here and there, very few times. But overall, I'm reading the book because of its journalism. This is why I'm reading the book. I'm reading the book because of its journalism, because of its investigation on the rise of the right wing, and also the nationalist phenomena that we have been witnessing in the last few years. And so the book is I think it's very original because, he actually met a lot of these right-wing figures. He met with Peter Thiel. He met with Mike Cernovich. He met with Mr. Einhorn or Lucius Wintrinch. He met with Jim Hoft, and he met with a lot of these big Silicon Valley guys. He met with these people, interviewed them, and talked with them, and he puts a lot of their quotes in this book. And so when you're reading these quotes, you're reading quotes that are coming from this book. It's not like he took it from the internet. I mean, there are a lot of quotes that he gets from online publications, but a lot of the quotes in this book are from his own original journalistic investigation. So this is something that I greatly appreciate from this book. And reading through this book, I'm learning about all these different names and different figures. A lot of the people in this book I've already heard of, but I'm learning new things about them. People like Peter Thiel, people like Mencius Moldbug, people like Milo Yiannopoulos. And by the way, Mencius Moldbug, his real name is Curtis Yarvin. the and the book really illuminates the dark side of the right wing world. All my life I've been reading up on the dark side of leftism and liberals and all these things. But one thing that I have realized over time is that the hardcore lefties and the right wing fanatics, they overlap on a lot of things. And the thing is that when you are let's say you're a hardcore leftist, you hate Christianity, hate religion, hate God, hate Jesus, hate Christians, all that stuff. You're hardcore abortion, all that stuff. There are two different paths that these types of people take. They can take the SJW road, and they can have this persona of compassion, and they can be, they can act like very nice people and say that they are for humanity, and they can say things like, well, I'm not a religious person, I'm an atheist, but I respect religious people because religion gives people a sense of community, and you can go down that road. Now, of course, you hate religion, of course you believe in infanticide and all that stuff, but you have nonetheless a more agreeable and tolerable personality, all right? In other words, you're not a schmuck. But then you have this other side, and that is, I support abortion. I've actually heard people say things like this. I support abortion because it means killing off the useless eaters or leeches or people who are just going to drain the system anyway. And you have leftists who talk like this, right? They're not in the majority, at least not in the public in the public face. But you do have leftists who have talked like this before, and they'll say things like, there was a study, an essay that came out. It was written by I forgot his first name. I believe his last name was Levitz. But this guy, he wrote basically that abortion could be used as a way to prevent crime, because people who have abortions are not technically, they're usually people on the lower socioeconomic level. So these people are going to have, according to this mentality, they're going to have a larger proclivity towards crime. They're going to have more of an inclination to violence or to thievery and things like that. So the best way to prevent these crimes is to have more abortions. And he was basically saying, here's his name. I found his name. His last name was Levitt. Let me see here. Stephen Levitt. That was his name. This guy is a big lefty, but he actually has said these things. Now, when you go down that path and you start saying, I hate humanity and people are just parasites and, we're just one big giant tumor, as Joe Rogan once said, and humanity is just scum and cancer and this and that and this. And abortion is great because it kills off people, and I hate people. And you do see a lot of people going down this road. Those types of people will eventually, along the way, overlap with the right wing, or they will just join the right wing circles. We have seen this before. And you have people like I forgot his name. He's a British guy, Collette, I think his last name was. But I remember hearing this this right wing guy. He said that abortion is great because as long as white people aren't doing it, then it's fine. And Richard Spencer actually said this. He said that we in the alt-right should not reject abortion because it's mainly just blacks doing it anyway, so who cares? Like, if you go into the hardcore right-wing circles, like this sentiment, this diabolical opinion is actually quite commonplace. But going into this book and learning about these types of groups and learning about these types of ideologies, you really do deepen your knowledge on the dark side of the right wing. So, for example, you have people like Peter Thiel, big Silicon Valley guy. He was actually originally on the board of Facebook. He was close to Zuckerberg. Now, he left the board, but he's still a pretty big shareholder for Facebook, which makes you wonder about Facebook and all of the commotion online about how Facebook is attacking the right wing, and Facebook hates conservatives. But nonetheless, one of the guys who was a part of Facebook at one point was a really big, Austrian School of Economics, Hayek, von Mises type right-wing libertarian, Peter Thiel. Now, Peter Thiel backs eugenist causes. For example, we know for a fact that he had backed. I'm not sure if he still does it, but I know for a fact that he has done it. But he backed financially the work of Audrey de Grey, I think his name is. And this guy's a big eugenist. He's one of the. He's part of that whole. What do you call it? The that movement that said they want to have a cure for death, and so we can make a way for us to live forever. This guy talks about taking embryos and finding which ones have the genes that make us die, and then getting rid of those genetics, which is essentially saying people with those genes that make us die, well, they're corrupting the gene pool, and in order for us to go through the next step of evolution and become the Übermensch or the Supermen, we have to purge humanity of these people so we can make the great super race that's never going to die, so we can become gods. And then he has also backed the work of Mencius Moldbug, a.k.a. Curtis Yarvine, who is a Jewish racist. And this is a fact. In fact, he wrote an article back in 2007. I think it was something like Why I Am Not a White Nationalist. In the title, he says he is not a white nationalist, but then you read the article, and it's quite obvious that he is dog whistling to white nationalists, especially when he says that he reads white nationalist blogs and that there's a lot of things that they say are true, and Jared Taylor and people like Steve Saylor, oh yeah, they're really great, and basically saying, the things that these race realists say are true about IQ and genetics and how certain races inherit more intelligence than other races, or that how certain races inherit a superior genetic makeup as opposed to other groups, other nations, other races. And so, looking at this whole situation, you can see it. It's very, very obvious. Curtis Yarvine, in fact, had a correspondence with Milo Yiannopoulos, another Zionist member of the Republic of Sodom. And in these email exchanges, Milo says, well, Peter Thiel's a little too soft. He needs to learn more about the political realities. To which Yarvine says, you don't know what you're talking about. Peter Thiel is on board with us 100%. He is just more careful about how he talks in the public eye. So what do you have in this whole thing? We know that Curtis Yarvine is connected with the Silicon Valley circles. We know that Peter Thiel is a big figure in Silicon Valley. We know that Peter Thiel is a major shareholder for Facebook. He was also on the board of directors for Facebook. And he's a huge eugenist. And he's part of that whole School of Economics circle. And it's very interesting. We know for a fact that a lot of these Austrian School of Economics, von Mises guys, we all know that once a year, a lot of them get together in Turkey in this resort town called Bodrum. And Peter Thiel was invited there, but he declined his invitation after the media found out about it and made a big hoopla about the whole thing. So it was bad for PR, but nonetheless, he was invited to come to this racist group in Turkey that consists of a bunch of American racists and German racists and a whole bunch of other freaking fanatics. So looking at the whole situation, you can see the dark side, and it's not just in that circle, because I understand how these things work. In any sort of political movement or political strata, you have different levels of the strata. So, for example, you have the people who are, moderates, and they smile to your face, and they have all the good arguments, but they say, oh, I'm not associated with those fanatics. But then you have the fanatics who are like, I am a fanatic, and they're very open about it. One thing that you realize is that the people on the moderate side are the people who have more of an agreeable face and an agreeable constitution about them. They either get disillusioned by the whole thing and realize it's all BS and they leave, or they just stop working with people like that or stop promoting the ideology, or they really are in agreement with the fanatics, and while they will say that they are not associated with the fanatics, they will dog whistle with the fanatics, or they will make arguments that are really apologetics for the fanatics, for ideas that these fanatics can leech onto or lodge onto or grip their hands onto. We see this with people like Dennis Prager. Now, Dennis Prager, he will never say, I love the alt-right, the alt-right is amazing. But Dennis Prager will say, Japan has such a low crime rate because it's a racially homogenous country. Lebensraum, anyone? Let's purge society of the undesirables, anyone? Let's make the society homogenous. It's interesting that the Young Turks who organized the Armenian genocide talked about homogeneity as well. How the Armenians and the Assyrians and the Greeks were preventing or impeding their aspiration for a homogeneously Muslim and Turkish society. The Nazis had the same ideas. The French Revolution, they wanted also an ideologically homogenous society, and that's why they killed off hundreds of thousands of people simply because they were Catholic. Dennis Prager is talking about racial homogeneity in this case, and he says, hey, look at Japan. They don't have a lot of foreigners in their midst. That's why their society is so great. Dog whistling, wink, wink. This is the argument that every freaking racist on the internet makes. There are two examples that Nazis and racists on the internet love to make. They love to talk about Israel, and they love to talk about Japan. Israel is an ethno-state. Why can't we have an ethno-state? And then they say that Japan is a homogenous society. Why can't we do the same thing? And, the argument is inept for several reasons. One thing is that America was never a homogenous society. We had people from different European societies. When the Germans first came here, guess what? Anglos didn't like it. When the Irish came here, I'm talking about Europeans. When the Dutch came here, the Italians, Anglos didn't like them. Anglo-Americans didn't like them. There was one, I think it was Benjamin Franklin, who called the Germans swarthy and that they weren't really white. Then when other people started coming into the U.S. from non-white countries, Chinese people, Japanese people, we didn't like them either. But nonetheless, Chinese people today are extremely integrated. Japanese people are extremely integrated. So America was never a homogenous country. So this whole idea of making a homogeneously white society, it just doesn't, it's stupid. How far are you going to go? Well, you have to have white skin. Well, what constitutes a white? I mean, the term white is very subjective. At one point in time, Italians weren't considered white. And then how far do you want to take it? When you say, okay, just white, and you say, okay, people who come from European backgrounds, fine, then what about Southern Europeans? What about Eastern Europeans? In the 1920s, the American Republican racists didn't want Southern and Eastern Europeans coming into the U.S., even though we technically today call those people white. So the whole thing is, it would lead to so much confusion, and it's just very unrealistic. There's a whole lot that I could say about this, but it would make this video a lot longer than it already is. The whole point is, you have dog whistling, and then you have just explicit fanaticism. And here's the thing that I fear is that I think you could actually see a deepening of this overlap between the fanatic left and the fanatic right, and eventually you could actually see just blatant alliances made between the two, and they'll both collaborate for their war on humanity. But no, the right wing is very, very dark. And there's so much evil in it, and there's a lot of crazy hysteria in it. You go back to that era of 2015, 2016, 2017. A lot of crazy things were happening in that period, and there was so much emotionalism and hysteria taking place on the internet. Migrants are going to take over. This is an invasion. This and that, and I fell for it. I'll admit it, because I know you're going to say, well, Ted, we found this post that you did about migrants in Europe. Here's the reality. I fell for that stuff. I'll admit it. It's not like I'm gonna be vacuous of awareness as to what I was doing. I fell for that stuff, but I quickly got disillusioned, and I realized that it was all a bunch of BS, and it was all hysteria, and it was all propaganda, and it was basically pointing to certain things that were true. For example, violent crimes committed by migrants. in order to justify an evil ideology of eugenics, racism, nationalism, tribalism, and all that stuff. So, yeah, just some of my thoughts on this subject. Hope you guys have learned something from this video. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.